David. You are listening or watching to the Vitalmoments podcast, and I'm joined by the one and the only Amy Stevenson.
I don't know. I feel like Amy Stevenson's a pretty common name.
It's a white girl name. It's a white girl name.
Sure, it's a white girl name. Yeah, there's.
Welcome to the Vitalmoments podcast. I am joined by the 1000th
Yeah,
Amy
there
Stevenson.
we go. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's good to have you here. How are you doing?
I am doing fairly well. My voice is hanging in there after a big day yesterday and being sick all week. So here we are.
All week leading up, trying to write a talk, then recording, and then doing 3 services in Poplar Hill.
Yeah, it was
Like,
awesome.
if you don't believe in a God, God kept her voice ready for the weekend, which
Legit,
is so good. That's
legit.
so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
That is great. We did have a great weekend across all sites,
Mhm.
and we're in our spiritual gift series called Empowered, and we looked at the spiritual gift of knowledge. Some people are like, isn't like wisdom and knowledge kind of like together? And I'm like, yes and no, but like because God's so good, he can separate them for a certain time,
Sure.
certain areas and specific moments for people's lives. And what is something like really big that you learned for even just yourself? Because we know as communicators, like on a Sunday or at a church, like often has to impact you first in your heart, before you can give a message around something so profound like knowledge from God. Like what's something that you took away learning from this gift?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And you're so bang on in that. Like, I actually had a few questions around this because I haven't taught in a little bit, so it was nice to be back into the saddle. And turns out similar to riding a bike. You're like, oh, okay, I got back into the rhythm pretty quick. But um, it is so important that people understand, like, it transforms the communicator first if it is going to be truly an impactful conversation or
Mm-hmm.
morning. And I think for me, such a huge takeaway on the value of the
Mm-hmm.
gift of knowledge is the
Mm,
ability it has to release the activity of God into a moment, into a situation.
cool.
So this is just not about like knowing stuff that outside of the spirit of God, you have no
Yeah.
business of knowing. So when
Yeah.
we look at that, I mean, I've just been soaking myself in this, obviously, like, when you did prophecy the other week, like we're just so soaked in this to like
Yeah.
just try discern and learn as much as we can around these things as
Mm,
well. Yeah, this is not just like, this is the buddy you want on your trivia team because they just know all this random stuff that they have in their brains.
yeah.
This is about having the spirit of God,
Mm-hmm.
sharing God's thoughts with you, things outside of yourself that there's just no way
Mm,
or business that you have of knowing these
mm,
things. So for me, it was that moment of like, when we have these words of knowledge come to us, we speak them, that utterance of this knowledge that God
yeah.
has given you, it invites the activity of God into that
Mm-hmm.
situation, to that moment. And I just think for me
Mm-hmm.
personally, just recognizing, yeah, this is so important. And it's not just about a like performance moment or pressure on that. It's actually just about God revealing himself.
Yeah, because isn't it like fascinating how like followers of Jesus, like when we tap into this supernatural side of the
Yeah,
faith, one of the guys on our prayer team in Exeter, he says it's like you're pulling out the gold
right.
within the community, right? Like you're getting to the good and the pure things. Often what happens is like, oh man, I've got a gift. It's not for me. Okay, I'm gonna start serving others, and then you can get on this like search or this hunt for these spiritual moments that you are a part of, right?
Hmm,
And it's just like, yeah, like God's using me. And then you kind of still in ways can glorify yourself. Like, look at how
hmm.
great I am.
Yep.
God's using me with all of the knowledge, right? But like you've mentioned, like it's not like this just natural ability to have supernatural revelation. It
Yeah.
really is a supernatural revelation. So like for you in your study and like how you talked on the weekend, how does someone continue to cultivate and like grow in this gift if they are seeking it? Or if they have a hunch that, you know what, I've had some moments that are like, it's not me. Like, how do I grow this thing so I can continue to be used by God?
Yeah, and this one I think is unique, and kind of along the same lines as when you talked about prophecy a few weeks ago. I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that this, as all, and I don't want people, even too, as we explore this series, and we are on this trajectory of a 3-year plan
Mm-hmm.
to roll out more understanding around spiritual gifts, all this stuff. So I love this, that this is not the end of the conversation. This is like
Yeah.
going to continue to happen. but let's not get ourselves caught up in like, this is the box that I fit in. So
Yeah,
me,
that's good.
myself, one of my primary gifts is teaching. I mean, hopefully, as I'm on the teaching team, but I can't put myself in this box like, well, someone needs a miracle. That's not me. I don't have gift of miracles. No,
Wow.
it is all, and Paul's so clear, it is all one spirit. And so when there is need of these things, we have access to that because of the spirit.
Mm,
So while yes, we will see for many of us primary gifts come forward, that don't get stuck in this box of, well, this is then who I am. Because even I
mm,
said this too when we're talking about the importance of this First Peter 4:10 verse as our
yep.
main verse. This is not about something we can wrap our identity in either. This is
Yeah.
simply a gift that's given, that's not even ours. It's just ours to steward and to care for. So back to your question. How do we start when we have this?
Yeah.
So this is one that I believe all believers can have access to. There will
Hmm.
be some that move in it more. And what I think too, even as you were listening to this conversation this weekend, maybe this is not something you have previously experienced, but did it light a fire inside of you?
Ooh, that's
Did
good.
something stir inside your heart
Hmm.
when you listen to it that's like beyond yourself? Like there was just something about this talk, about this idea, and it's not a glorifying moment. It's a like, it's coming from that place of so loving Jesus the
Hmm.
Father, that intimate relationship that we can have because of what Jesus has done. And for others, that we see them understand and know there is a God that is very real, a God that knows you, knows details of your life,
Yeah.
cares about you, and is present here right now in this situation that you're experiencing. So I think, maybe you're someone who has sort of had these experiences. So as I describe
Mm,
some of these things, you're like, oh, that has happened to me before. I think especially what I am hoping and praying to see is especially the feeling one where you're in a gathering or something like
yeah.
that, and you begin to have sympathy pains in your body that are actually God sharing with you. There's someone in this room that your shoulder's on fire right now and it is sore. He's
Yeah.
showing you there's someone that he wants to heal in that space. So that's one that I'm praying we're going to begin to see
Mm,
more. And then as a result, we're going to see people encounter the love of the Father and bring healing to their physical bodies. So I think there are some people that heard that for the first time and went, I think that may have
yeah.
happened to me before. And so just boldly step into that
I
and
love it.
start, just sharing that with trusted people in your life.
Hmm.
One thing I do want to encourage people on with this is start making room. This is a word that I've been ruminating on for several months now. What does it look like for us to make room in our lives to sit in silence and to listen and
Hmm.
ask the Father to show us our hearts? And what I find for myself is not so much in that moment of me asking where those things happen, but it sets me up for the day to be more aware of those moments when they come. And
Yeah.
out of nowhere, all of a sudden, I'll have this image come to my mind as I'm praying for this person or thinking about
Hmm.
something, or a creative idea is downloaded in my head of this is actually how we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's paying attention to those things. And as you're exploring that, paying attention
Hmm.
to, because our mind, soul, and body are all connected, what was I experiencing when that happened? What was my focus on? What was I thinking about? And then learning slowly that weight of when is it me and my ideas and when is this actually
Yeah.
God? And so then, okay, as you share this, did it connect with that person? Did it minister to them? And what I
Yeah.
find as you utter that word of knowledge so often,
Hmm.
like you said, it initiates the activity of God. Then
Hmm.
suddenly other things may start coming out and it lands with that person and they feel seen and loved and cared for in that space. And then paying attention to, yeah, that follow up afterwards. So just really just paying attention to a lot of
Hmm.
things and measuring it, discerning it, does this line up with the Bible, all these things. And especially if you're learning to begin to exercise this, bringing a trusted person alongside you as you are learning this and growing in this
Yeah.
is going to be so key and important. Community is so vital to
Hmm.
so many of these gifts and learning them, but this one especially, because this one can kind of get off the rails if we're just going to be like cornering people in a bathroom. I got a word of knowledge for you. Like that's freaky.
Yeah, that's not making
That's
room, that's being
yeah,
wild.
yeah,
Um, and that's where I kind of wanted to go. Like you've in ways answered this question already, but like, how do you help people discern the difference between like the word of knowledge or and their own thoughts and emotions. Because like I had a moment in Miami this past week when I was down there for a conference, and excuse me, there was some prayer ministry time, and it was a really powerful moment. I wasn't on the prayer team, but I looked over, I saw this guy standing there. He was all tatted up. He was probably the coolest guy I've ever seen in my life. Got to know him a little bit before the conference, like before this moment. Name's Kyle. He's just north of Nashville in Tennessee. And I really sensed I had a word for him, a
Mm.
word of knowledge. And I was standing there, I'm humming, I'm hawing. Like I've followed Jesus for real for the last like 10 years of my life, or so, just under 10 years of my life. And like I've taken the advice of make room, but I still struggle with like, oh, do I hop over this chair in the middle of this crowd and
Oh,
literally go put my hand on on his shoulder and say, "Hey, dude, like I think I have something for you."
yeah.
Like, how do we help followers of Jesus continue to be like, you know what? I rather take a chance on this word than not take a chance, because like the thing would be like, well, what if God? What if it was me? Right? Like, what do I do with that? And then I look like I got my foot in my mouth, and the guy's like, "Wow, not a chance in the world." Like, so what? How do we help followers of Jesus still take that confidence to say, I'm going to step into this moment?
Yeah. I think the fact, David, that you still wrestle with it is evidence of the heart of the Father inside
Hmm.
you.
Cool.
I think when I mean, even as communicators, like yesterday, I was like nervous as anything to
Yeah.
communicate this message. And um I don't ever want to stop being nervous because these things
Hmm.
are weighty. These things are so important. And this moment we just start thinking, we've got this, we're good. I think we
Yeah.
stop leaning and relying on the Holy Spirit.
Whew.
I
Say that
think,
again. Once we stop. Oh, I got you coughing.
yeah, got me all excited about it. I really do. I think the moment we stop getting a little nervous or taking that
Mm.
moment in time to test this and just jumping into things, I think is when we get off track, where
Wow.
we are no longer relying on the Holy Spirit. We are relying on a muscle that we've exercised, right? Even within leadership, right? We
Yeah.
can exercise that leadership muscle so easily and quickly and jump into leadership mode instead of, okay, God, what do you want for this moment and for this person? And so I think it's good. I think we should always still continue to have a bit of a nervousness when we're doing these things because, you know, we are then taking that step of communicating on behalf of God and sharing his heart. That
Hmm.
should always be weighty. That should always be hard. There should always be a tension that we hold that I think is so beautiful. And so what I would say is for me, I can't get this thought out of my head. Sometimes
Hmm.
things come in, but like if it keeps common and common, and then I even kind of start to feel nervous in my body, like your heart kind of starts pumping a little
Yeah.
more, and you're like, God, seriously, and you just kind of can't get away with it. I
Yeah.
say go for it because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, so I write a few different things in preparation. I read a couple different books, a couple different articles, and had a lot of conversations. And there's this book called God's Secrets by Sean Boltz. Really recommend to
Yeah.
listeners. It really unpacks this gift really well. Um, and he talks about this moment where, and he is like very well versed. He gets very clear, very specific words of knowledge, people's names, people dates, and then all of a sudden prophecy flows from that,
Wow.
or wisdom flows from that. So
Hmm.
he actually talks about this moment where he was speaking, and he's not brand new to this. He had been doing this for a while, speaking in this
Hmm.
place, and so he always prepares ahead of time. You know, God, what do you want to say? What do you want to do? And he might have a few names going into this space, and so he had 5 different things going into this space, 5 different words of knowledge, and he went up into that space, and all 5 were a miss. And so he just owned it and was just like, "Hey, that's okay, guys. Like we're all still learning
Yeah.
this. And you know what? How about I just pray a prayer blessing over this and over this gathering? Like there was no ego in this and all this
Yeah.
stuff." So he does this, and then he gets off the stage and later meets with the girl. She's like, "You know what? I came out to debunk you because all my friends are into you. I think you're a fraud. All this stuff." She's like, "But the fact that you could do that, own
Yeah.
it, and just at the end of the day, everyone felt so loved and seen and cared for." I just thought that was so beautiful. So actually his
Hmm.
misses are what impacted her the most.
Wow.
And I help me remember if I said this in the recording. You know what this is like after speaking it so many times. But I shared a moment where I got it wrong there was this young man in a worship gathering that I was a part of across the way, and
Mhm.
I was so sure this question he had on his mind. I was so confident,
Yeah,
like
you
it's
did.
coming to me. Okay, I did see it. Good. And like I don't know. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. And I went and I'm like, hey, is this what something you're wrestling with? And he's like, no. I'm like,
And he had, like, a blank stare.
okay. Yeah, like was just totally
"Nah,
like,
bro."
nope. And even yesterday as I talked about that and talking with Ron, he's like, "But you know what? Out of that
Mhm.
crowd of people, that guy was seen. Like
Yeah.
you identified something, and so at the end of the day, people feel love.
Mhm.
So go for it because you have no
Yeah.
idea what is on the other side, what kind of activity of God could be released, or
Mhm.
even what your mistake could open up where,
Mhm.
you can maybe laugh together or
Yeah.
whatever. But like I think it's worth the risk at the end of the day, I do, and that's coming from a person that's still like, "Oh,"
Yeah,
like
and I think what we need to be very clear with, and if I was to, like, put my pastoral hat on for
Mhm,
this, is the fact that the spiritual gifts are not just for you, they are to serve and up like, to build
exactly.
up the church, right?
Yep.
We've been saying that. They've been given to us by grace, so we give them away by grace as well.
Mhm,
Um, and what we need to realize is some of the gifts get us out of our comfort zone to
mhm,
get into the space and the bubble of someone else's personal being. And you have to step into a moment, like you've been encouraging. If it's like inside your body and you cannot get away from it, it's in your mind. Like that's what happened to me in Miami. Is like I could not focus on the prayer ministry time of we were all called to come up for prayer, but I could not get up there until I went and talked to Kyle. So like
yeah,
I'm hopping over the chairs, I go talk to him. But the reality is some of the gifts that God gives us need to be operated in a way of like you give them away in and you also give them away out,
mm,
right? You're not going in with prophecy or wisdom or knowledge or these moments where you're speaking over someone's life and being like, thus says the Lord, you
yeah,
better obey. You are actually giving them an opportunity to say, yeah, you know what? I do want to receive this from you. Can you share with
mhm,
me? So you
yep,
say, like you said before, like, hey, I believe I have something for you. Can I share with you?
yep,
And if they say no, you say, okay, absolutely, no worries, right? You
yep,
give them a way in. If they say yes or no, you step into that moment or you walk away from that moment.
yep,
And if they do say yes and you give that word, you also give them a way out of saying,
totally.
now, I wanted to give this to you. Now, we can pray right now together, or you can go to a trusted friend or a family member to pray with it, or you can just listen to it and just kind of leave it be. Right?
Yep,
That is a very healthy way to operate in the gifts. Of saying, you know what, I'd rather be obedient than
mhm,
disobedient,
mhm,
and you let them pick the ball up, or say, you know what, I ain't taking it at all. It's all good.
that's
Um,
right.
because that I believe, like you've said, and what we believe what's been happening at VBC is people are being seen and cared for that way,
Yep,
right? Um,
mhm,
even if they say no, it's like, someone came and talked to me, right?
yeah,
Um,
totally.
and
Yep,
that's the powerful thing about these gifts is we want people to understand that they are seen and known by God, and it
exactly.
may just be by us as bags of skin walking up to them and saying, "Hey, what up? I've got something for you." Maybe bags of skin. That's a great way to
Oh,
look at it,
wow.
right? Um, but what's crazy is these bags of skin carry the Spirit of the Lord,
Yeah,
who are followers of Jesus,
mhm,
and we
mhm,
can usher into His presence. And I think that's what the knowledge for me, the knowledge gift, re-listening to your talk this morning, getting ready for the talk was. The knowledge gift really ushers in His presence in a beautiful way.
that's right. Yeah,
It's like there's an intimacy
totally.
where for you to be like, you know what, this has to be God. I've got to step into this moment. I got to share this with them because if
Mhm,
it is God, they're gonna like one of our prayer team members. They had this vision of the community again being wrapped up in His love like a blanket,
mm,
and His knowledge helps them know Him
yeah,
and His love so deeply. So that's what my heart is as a pastor, as we've been looking at this gift over the last 24 hours together.
mhm.
And now that connect groups are going into it, why don't you share one last thing for the connect groups going into it this week? Right, we got new groups, old groups that are going to be exploring the gift of knowledge. And someone, like you said, might have been there on Sunday and be like, "This is me. I can't wait to get to connect group."
Yeah.
And some of them are going to be like, "It ain't me."
Bring it on. I love
Yeah,
people who are like, "Yeah, that's not me at all." I'm like, why does that get under your skin so much? You might need to, like, dig into that a
yeah.
little." But anyways, only because that was me. Um, Okay, you nailed it on the head that like
Yeah.
this all has to be wrapped up in love. Like so many of
Hmm.
these gifts, right? The greatest of all these things is love.
Pursue
And
love.
outside of that, all of this is so obnoxious. So
Yeah.
obnoxious. It makes no sense. It does more damage than good. I had a woman actually come up to me yesterday, very first service, and say, I've never heard this gift talked about this way. And even that idea of love being involved in it, she's
Hmm.
like, I've had words of knowledge and that person was off. It did not feel good. There was nothing good about it. The
Yeah.
experience was awful. And I'm like, yeah, so that's not the heart of the Father in all of this. The heart of the Father, of God, the Father, is to, yeah, encapsulate you in his love.
Hmm.
And even if it's uncomfortable for a moment, because if it's sin being exposed or something like that, it can be uncomfortable for a moment.
Yeah.
But um as you're talking about this in groups, so I would actually encourage groups to make room for exercising this, giving an
Yeah.
opportunity to this. So, I mean, and I wish I would have had time in our talk to talk about it. We actually did this with our Connect group leaders on one of our
Yeah.
development days. So, if you don't know this, we take so much time with our Connect group leaders. We really spend time with them. I know this podcast is getting long today, but this is a big one to talk about. But
Speed
we
it up, sister.
yeah, we spent
Nice.
time together. She asked us to sit with someone we do not know well. And I mean,
Hmm.
we've been spending some time as Connect groups across all sites. So it's almost hard now to sit with someone you don't know. But we all sat with someone we're not familiar with. And all we prayed and asked God was, God, how can I bless this person? And
Yeah.
all over the room, there were words of knowledge. They're like, I
Yeah.
don't know why. I see a motorcycle and a leather jacket. And that person just starts crying because they're like, I love riding my bike. And so I actually encourage you guys,
Yeah.
make room to exercise this. Just sit in silence as a group, pray for the person to your left, say,
Hmm.
God, how can I bless this person? What do you want to show me? And try and when you're starting into this, just trust the first thing that comes into your head and be okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
And you receiving it, be honest. Okay.
Hmm.
Because it is so important that you're honest as people are learning to exercise this. Words of knowledge can be all kinds of things. It can be
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff. It can give you creative ideas. Like I've heard of people who have all of a sudden they are not engineer minds, but they actually have a brilliant engineering idea but they have no idea what it means because they're not
Wow.
an engineer. And God gives them this download and this
Yeah.
is a solution to a problem at work or
Mhm.
something like that. So don't limit God in what he wants to reveal to you. He's a knower of all things.
I love
And
that.
yeah, so I
Make
say go
room.
for it, guys. Go for it in your groups this week. We actually didn't do this in my group last week, but we had a whole lot, or yesterday we had a whole lot to unpack in our group. But
So
go for
long
it,
story short,
practice it,
make room.
make
Make
room,
room and
make
practice
room.
it.
Yeah,
And just, yeah, embrace the moment. Okay.
yeah.
Cool, Amy. Way to go. You
Thanks,
did
friend.
it.
Here we
Yeah,
are.
like
Thanks for listening, guys. Holding on this long.
sickness and all. You did it. Way to go. Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening or watching today. If you are in a Connect group, man, like Amy said, make some room, really be intentional with these things. And you might be surprised how God works in that Connect group, in that living room or back breezeway, wherever you're hanging out, or it's in a coffee shop. It does not matter if you're a one-on-one with a friend. Take some time to really practice these gifts. And
Mhm.
we're praying for you. We can't wait to hear stories. If you've got stories of God moving,
Excited.
reach out on our website. You can reach out and share stories through there. And one tiny but fun announcement. I shouldn't say it's tiny, but the Love Your Neighbor boxes are coming back from what I know and hear in the backgrounds of VPC. So if you are someone that is part of VPC and you've heard about the Love Your Neighbor box before, get excited. And if you're newer to VPC and you're listening in, this is something to be really excited about, to be able to share some love around the Easter season. Okay.
Mm.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and God bless you.
Bye, friends.